Pleasure to be here with Mr. Bourassa for SupermanHomepage.com. First question. These are iconic characters. Everyone knows them. You know,
right.
Worldwide, all you need to do is put up an S or back. People know who you're talking about. How challenging is it to do new uniforms that still keep these iconic looks for the characters?
Well, I mean, we have, there's a great deal of reference, obviously, tradition to pull from the comics. You know, there's a wealth of inspiration in their long storied existence. So, you know, you kind of, there are certain things that you absolutely have to make the characters recognizable, but those are pretty obvious. And then you just try to get into the core of the character and infuse some of your own influences along with the traditions that, you know, we try to cleave to when we're doing our interpretations for the medium of animation.
So, of the characters that you had to design, who's the most difficult one to design for?
I'm going to say that for this movie, Cyborg presented probably the biggest challenge. He goes through several incarnations in the film. We wanted to give a really plausible visual interpretation of his evolution through the story, and so, you know, he's constantly adapting and changing, partly just as he assumes this new identity, but also inherently in that character, he's always changing to adapt to a new context depending on his situation. You know, that's part of his skill set is, you know, evolving and coming up with new solutions depending on what sort of situation he's placed in. So Cyborg's always a challenge to kind of, you know, come up with all his transitions and stuff, and also particularly challenging for the medium of animation because you have to decide, you know, a character that's, you know, basically mechanical. You have to come up with a way to suggest detail while still using an economy of line, so that you don't kill the animators that are working on stuff because they can't draw as much detail as we could get in, say, a comic book version of the same character. So he's always difficult in terms of how much detail can I use to describe these mechanical transformations and stuff like that. And so he presents a particular challenge. And I think Superman's always difficult to draw. You know, people, he has such a wonderful tradition in the comics, and he's got this very small strike zone as far as what works and what doesn't for his character. He's not as open to interpretation as a character like Batman. So he's always difficult to do, but, you know, again, you just try to get into the core themes of what makes a character work and then, you know, go from there.
Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Alright, so you're a veteran at this now. What's different about Justice League War as opposed to the other things that we've seen from in the past?
The one thing about this is that we were doing something that was based upon you know, a new kind of storyline that has just come out, you know, recently. So we you know, one of the things that we wanted to do was kind of like make this stand on its own, in a sense that, you know, it's not based on the Bruce Timm Justice League. It's not based on any other Justice League that's come before it. This is like a new thing. And so one of the things I wanted to do was, you know, amp up the action, you know, kind of really take it to that next level that, you know, maybe that, you know, the fans haven't seen before with these characters.
Well, now that you ask the same question, these are iconic characters.
Yes.
And you want this to come across as a new feel, something fresh, even though these characters are very well known. So how much of a challenge is that in directing?
Oh, it's really hard. I mean, the one thing though is that you have to understand that these characters are still new in the sense that they're going to be very, very different than the characters that we know and love. You know, like for example, Wonder Woman is going to be very different than the Wonder Woman from the Bruce Timm's Justice League, or even the way that I've even done Wonder Woman in the past, because this Wonder Woman, you know, she's kind of new. This is the first time she's met any of these characters, and so she's basically fresh, you know, fresh from Themyscira. So the kind of her reactions to the human world are going to be kind of based upon that. And you know, to a lot of fans, it's going to be a little different, you know, because I'm not used to that myself. And so it was that kind of take that, you know, it's a little different. Same thing with Superman. Superman is very different than the Superman that we know. You know, we're used to the Superman who's been trained and kind of is the Boy Scout that we know and love. Well, it's just Superman. He's just come back from Smallville, and you know, he's in Metropolis. He's been around for a little bit, but he hasn't established himself. All these heroes have, for the most part, haven't established themselves. Even Batman, people have never even seen Batman before. They've only heard of him, and so because of that, it kind of helps create this kind of story where it's like an anything goes, and it keeps things, at least for me, it was kind of fresh to kind of approach it with that kind of idea.
Thanks a lot.
Oh yeah, cool. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
So we're here with Mr. Tucker for SupermanHomepage.com. Just one question. Why Justice League War? We have a smattering of outstanding work from DC Comics, and Justice League War gets the nod. So why does this particular storyline get the nod over, say, Kingdom Come or any of the other treasured, stories that we have already?
Well, this movie is relaunching the Justice League franchise in a continuity. So that's pretty much what the first storyline, Justice League Origins, did for the New 52. So we're adapting that story, and then from there on we'll be doing our own stories in continuity based off of that starting point. So that's why. The plan is to do 2 movies in continuity and then 1 movie that's an offshoot. So that doesn't keep us from going back and adapting some of those older stories.
I know. Very true.
So, any fan who has any qualm about, well, look, what about these other stories that we saw, that never got the animated treatment? They can still look forward to those in the future.
It's up to this. The door's open to do those.
Thank you very much.
That's it. Okay.
So, I'm here with the fastest man alive.
That's right.
And he can tell us in a slow-mo exactly what it was like for him to voice the Flash.
I tell you, it was an absolute pleasure and kind of a dream. I was a huge fan of the original Justice League cartoons when I was a kid. So to be able to be in this movie was kind of a dream come true.
What goes into voicing the Flash? I mean, what kind of mindset do you feel that this character has that helps you along with doing it?
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, you approach it like you approach any role, and you try to find the truth of who this guy is and an emotional foundation that feels real. And then that allows you to go anywhere. That allows you to do the fast talking. It allows you to have, and in the room, we were able to improvise and try different options, and we end up with a character who feels real, feels grounded, but is fun and can be a little silly and can get embarrassed and can be heroic all at the same time.
It sounds like a lot of fun. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
And if I say again, this has to be the best suit that I have seen in some time.